Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the start of the Love in the Night reading vlog, where I am attempting to read as many paranormal romances as I can between the 6th and the 13th of April. And it is the 6th here in Australia, so I have started, even though I am, you know, like 12 hours ahead of everyone else. But that's the benefit of being where I am. I am on school holidays and I do also have other things that I need to read. So this week is not purely just going to be paranormal romance, but it is going to be a significant portion of my reading. And I have already kickstarted today with A Time to Rise by Bauer, and I would go through my TBR, except I did that in my April TBR, so I'll leave that linked on the screen if you want to see what it is. Besides, I'm more than likely to change my mind from that TBR as we go through the week. Anyway, Time to Rise by Bauer, I wanted to kickstart with one of my favourite authors because of course I did, and this is not disappointing. This is the kind of nonsense that I like. It's a contemporary story, but it's set in the Vatican, and you have Alan, who is a supernatural hunter of some kind. So I'm thinking Knights Templar, since that is mentioned on the back of the book, although that hasn't explicitly been stated on page yet. And he used to be a former member of the Swiss Guard at the Vatican, but he is a bit of a pariah amongst the rest of the guards, and he hunts the supernatural alongside a priest who no one has a record of. And the only person who knows what Alan does is the commandant, who was the previous person to hold Alan's role. At the very start of the book, he is made the mentor of a new member of the Swiss Guard, Christoph, and Christoph is holding a grudge. Both of them are queer, and there are some conversations around the fact that there are plenty of queer people living in and around the Vatican. They just find a way to deal with it, and they have their own methods of coping, which makes sense. Alan is the one who kind of helps break Christoph out of his funk to try and see the best way to move forward. And we don't get Christoph's perspective until a good chunk of the way into the book, so we're kind of only just figuring out his motives and what's going on for him. And also we know that Alan lost his lover years prior and has been really stuck in a spiral ever since then. And I'm suspecting, it hasn't been stated on page yet, that his lover was killed potentially by a vampire. This book is full of all sorts of different supernatural creatures. We've had wraiths, ghouls, vampires. They're not all necessarily explicitly on page for large chunks of time, but they are involved in scenes where Alan is investigating sort of a rise in supernatural crimes happening in the city. I will say though, because this is Bauer, there are plenty of content warnings. Content warnings abound in this one. There are homophobic comments and also homophobic slurs. There is a scene where Christoph is drugged and sexually assaulted by a bishop, and there's also lots of fighting, blood, gore, supernatural kind of creature things going on. And these two, for people who talk to each other a lot, they're not very good at talking about what they need to talk about. So we are at the 200 point. Christoph has just had a very rude awakening into the world of the supernatural. He had no idea it existed, and Alan was previously telling him he couldn't tell him what his role within the Vatican is because he can't. Like, it's a secret role. But both of them have just been possessed by an incubus, so I suspect things are going to go down. The incubus has been excised from them, but I suspect we're going to be diving into how Christoph feels about that situation in a moment. I mean, it's Bauer. I was never not going to have a good time with it, let's be real. I love stuff like this. I love stories that intertwine religion and belief and faith and personal identity stuff, where characters have to figure all of that out. I love that stuff. I know it is messy. It's supposed to be messy. I do like stories like that. In terms of prompts for the readathon, if you're doing the bingo board, it would fit a queer story, and if you read it as an ebook, because I think you can get it on KU, it would be an ebook. I just have been collecting Tales books, so I don't have it as an ebook. For the scavenger hunt, I'm going to go with Magic Touch, Getting Horny, Hot as Hell, because there are demons in this. There's even some dream sequences. They're not, as far as I'm aware, not supernatural creatures in dreams, but the dreams are a really important part of Christoph and Alan's story, so you could count that as well. And now I'm going to continue reading it because I'm having a great time. Hello everyone, I come to you with not one, but two books to talk about. So I did finish A Time to Rise by Bauer, and I think in the last little clip I said that it hadn't been confirmed yet that Alan was a Knight Templar. That was like the second page that I read after I finished filming that clip, that was confirmed. And also there's a really blatantly obvious reveal that my start of holiday brain just completely missed, but makes so much sense. You know when you just have those little niggling things in the back of your head going, okay, well, why is this character behaving this way towards a certain character? I'm like, oh, that was so obvious. And you just totally misread that entire situation. So that was me. That was me. I really enjoyed A Time to Rise. I think the last 100 pages, we get a lot of reveals, and I'm not entirely certain there was enough signposting for some of them. Some of them there were, absolutely. It didn't take away from my enjoyment of the book. I'm just like, hang on, did I miss something? Did I not get a clue for that before. It could just be me, because as I just said, I'm clearly clueless when I read things. I think really interesting vampire lore. I enjoyed it. It's Bauer. I don't know what else to say. It's just a solid author for me. And then I just decided to pick up Sing Me to Sleep by R.M. Virtues, which is our group book pick. This is a reread for me. I haven't read it in ages, and I just enjoyed being back in the world. I'd forgotten a whole lot about this. So it's about Penny, who lived through a home invasion. Her father was killed in that home invasion, and so she is living with PTSD as a result of that, to the point where she's having nightmares and she doesn't like being left alone in her house. She lives with her sister, but her sister travels for work. And so at the start of the book, her sister convinces her to try some prescription sleeping pills just to get a good night's sleep. And then we're introduced to another side character, Shane, who brings her some edibles. They help her sleep, but she begins to experience sleep paralysis. And while she's experiencing sleep paralysis, she recognizes that there is someone in the room with her, and that is a demon called Acheron. And I totally forgot that this book had consensual non-consent in it, or CNC. I completely forgot that that was a massive part of this story, which is not a thing that bothers me at all. I just completely forgot that it was there. So thank you, R.M. Virtues, for having a very extensive content warning note at the front of the book, because I'm like, I totally forgot that that was in this book. There is a lot of sex on page. There's also some setup for the demon versus angels kind of world and a potential war. We haven't had a book come out as a sequel or a spin-off of this yet. Hopefully we will at some point, but on its own, this is just a delightful book. Really short, like under 180 pages, even under 170 pages. It's 168 pages long. A really fun time. Not a difficult read at all. And as someone who has experienced sleep paralysis many times, not to this extent, but as just as a thing, yeah, the early descriptions that Penny has for it when she's freaked out by it, 100%. That's a highly relatable experience. So yes, 2 books down for the Love in the Night readathon. I'm doing well. Why hello again. It is day 2 of the Love in the Night readathon, and I have 2 more books to talk to you about. They are both in the same series. It's actually a trilogy, and I finished the trilogy, so yay, that's an accomplishment. So the series that I finished is the Demons in Law series by Louisa Masters, which are queer paranormal romances. They are connected to the Hidden Species series, and then there was another one that was the Hebe Dragons series. This is the 3rd series. Pretty much all of the characters from the first 2 series feature in this 3rd series, and the best way I can describe it, if you like Eden Finley and Saxon James's hockey verse, or the Satan verse, and you like idiots to lovers kinds of stories, these books kind of give you the same vibe, only they're paranormal romances with demons and, in this case, dragons. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Micah, which is the 2nd book in the series, and I should say that the 3 books in the series follow 3 cousins who are all demons. They live in a very small, remote mountain town in Switzerland that is very difficult to get to. Demons happen to be able to teleport, so this town is perfect for them. They live in a world where there are lots of supernatural beings. There is a lot of interspecies connection now, and there are some humans who know that the supernatural world exists, but for the most part, they are kind of self-managing themselves. And in this particular series, this small town has discovered a hidden treasure trove of a dragon's hoard. And in Micah, they are trying to unlock it. And to do that, they enlist the help of Cam, who is an incubus who happens to be very good at creating puzzles. And this is the ultimate puzzle, and he is ecstatic. Cam is the kind of character who just is like a kid hopped up on sugar because he gets to do the thing that he loves the most, to the point where he is easily distracted by what he is doing. And he is assigned Micah, who is one of the grandsons of one of the town council leaders. And Micah's job is to teleport Cam to the cave and back again as needed, because the cave is quite remote. It's the middle of winter. It is very snowy. There is not any other way to get to this cave, just as there's no way to get to the town in the wintertime. And it's their story. There is a minor side plot with a disgruntled customer / stalker that Cam has, which is kind of inconsequential to the rest of the story. And the series features quite a bit of family matchmaking. So that one was fun, but I think my favorite book in the series is the 3rd book, Zachary, which I just read. So I have the 1st book, Asher. I got Zachary when I was at Books in Sight earlier this year. I have ordered a copy of Micah to pick up when I see Louisa again at Rare, because I want the whole series in the little cute illustrated covers. That's just my personal preference. So this book is Zach's book. Zach is Micah's cousin, and Zach is kind of the community park ranger, animal expert, etc. He's a geologist and a biologist, and he spent a lot of time in this town trying to keep everyone safe. And he's kind of doing the job. He's not being paid for it, which does come up as a plot point in the story. And he is being micromanaged by his grandmother, who is a force to be reckoned with. A lot of her decisions in this book force a confrontation between her and her grandsons, who are finally have had enough of her meddling. She does mean well, but she meddles. Anyway, this is Zach's relationship with Ronan, who is a dragon. Ronan is a character we met in the previous series. He is the twin brother of one of the main characters from that series, and they had not seen each other in thousands of years. They were twins, they were separated at a very young age, and they were raised separately. And Ronan was raised to not know that he was a dragon, and so he's been sort of discovering his history and all that, and he has been assigned as the liaison between the dragons and this town and the Dragon's Hoard cave that they have unlocked. And it's Ronan's job to catalogue what they find inside. His relationship with Ronan gets off to a really rocky start. They're both in reasonably bad places because Zach is trying to put forward a plan for the town to open a ski resort, and his plan is shot down by his grandmother. And so he's grumpy. Ronan is just very socially awkward. He doesn't really know how to make friends, and so he gets off on the wrong foot with people in the town, but he slowly makes friends and becomes part of the town, and Zach is forced to admit that he has not necessarily been the kindest, most gracious host welcoming Ronan to the town. And so it becomes a really slow burn, sort of friends to lovers kind of story. It's really adorable. I loved it. I thought it was fun. I love that Ronan loves to bake, and like that's what helps break the ice with a couple of the characters, is that they just go, what's that smell that I can smell in your kitchen? That smells delicious. And he's like, here, have some croissants, or here, have muffins and cookies. He's a dragon that bakes. Which also is quite a nice counterpoint to Zach, who is a demon who likes to make soups. It's kind of adorable. I had a great time. I'm glad I finished off the series. I have also pre-ordered a couple of other things from Louisa Masters because I know exactly what I'm going to get from her stories. They're fluffy and fun and low angst and often idiots to lovers. And on that note, I will be back when I have read some more books. I don't know what I'm reading next. Day 3 check-in for the readathon, and I have just finished reading Villains by Necessity by Elisse Hay, which is the paranormal romance set in Melbourne. This one, it's so interesting. It does read more urban fantasy, and the romance, it's so fascinating. So we have Aurora, who is our main character. She is a former supernatural soldier who was involved in a really bad mission, a mission that went wrong, and so she has left that career and become a caretaker, which is kind of like a supernatural social worker. And in book 1, she becomes involved with the leader of the local lycanthrope pack. And in this book, they're still together at the start of the book until they break up. The actions that she took at the end of the previous book have had an impact sort of on how she's perceived professionally in the second book. And because she is one of the only trained, what do they call them? Retrievals, I think is the name of the group that take on special missions. Like, she's one of the closest people that they can call. She's still technically on retainer. She doesn't work that job full time, but they can call on her because she's one of the only people with the skill sets that they need for really bad cases. And so one of her clients as a caretaker is attacked. That puts her in a position where she ends up on administrative leave from her official role, and the police and everyone basically still need to call on her because she still is the only witch with the skill sets to do what it is that they need to do, because vampires are going nuts, they're a fae all over the place, and they may or may not have an angel, which is just as bad as having a demon because they're two sides of the same coin. Just a side note, I love it when angels are not like the good guys in a story. Like, that's just a thing that I like. I had a great time with it. I know that this will not be for everyone. One, because the love interest is a member of the police, although being in urban fantasy world, he's kind of like the supernatural side of it. So like that may or may not impact how you perceive the book. It does go into lots of different things. So there is a trans side character who does experience some transphobia and things like that in the workplace, although it's all actively addressed and called out. And in this case, in the book, it's not their immediate friends and supervisors, it's sort of the next level up. So their co-workers are trying to find the best way to handle that and to keep them safe and make them feel included. There is sexism, sexual harassment, violence, alcohol, drugs. There is a love potion that is used, and that basically takes away your free will. What else can I say? So there's that loss of autonomy through that. But I mean, it's the second book in the series. I'm still enjoying it. I like that it's set in Melbourne. There are plenty of places that are mentioned in it. My favourite was when they mentioned Docklands, because there is absolutely nothing in Docklands. That's where I go watch the hockey. That's the only reason I would go to Docklands. There's nothing there. And yet a vampire nest is out at Docklands, and that just totally tracks. If anyone is familiar at all with Melbourne, you might agree with me. Also, I'm being facetious. There is stuff out at Docklands, but they haven't done much with the area. Aurora is a character that I quite like. She's a smartass. She is a little bit like Kate from the Kate Daniels series, I'm not going to say she's the same because I don't think it is, but she is not one to shy away from doing the right thing, even if the way that she has to go about achieving the right thing maybe puts her in the firing line. Like, she's more than willing to do that. So her relationship from the first book dissolves. She ends up sleeping with her boss, and for her it's a no strings thing, and she is also trying to help him be less of a mansplaining guy. And he actually learns a lot in this book and grows a lot in this book, thankfully, because he was insufferable in the first book. There's her relationship with Tig, who is the supernatural detective, lead detective. I am thinking I might actually just continue the series. I have the next 2 books and time this week to read them. So that would be cool to clear a series, because this is one of the series on my series list to read this year. So that's a very distinct possibility. And I'll have time tomorrow because I'm getting my hair done. So I'll be sitting down for a couple of hours doing nothing. That might be the plan. Hello everyone. So it is the next day. I have had my hair done because it's the holidays and that's the only time I can get my hair done. And I have also finished 2 books and started a 3rd one. So the first book that I finished was my reread of Magic Binds by Ilona Andrews. I've had the graphic audio just on in the background for the last couple of days. Have I already read this twice this year? Yes. Yes, I have. Have I read it a 3rd time? Yep, it's fine. Everything's fine. It's the 9th book in the Kate Daniels series. It is the book where Kate and Karen get married. That is not a spoiler. That is the whole point of the series. And it's the first time that Kate, with her allies, has a giant standoff with her father. It's fun, and it's Kate calling into question what her magic and what her power makes her feel and occasionally makes her do, and how she controls that. So I love that sort of thing. The other book that I finished was Portal to Pleasure, and this is a very short monster romance novella. It's 87 pages long, I think, and it's about a woman who accidentally summons 3 demon/monster type individuals to her when she has an orgasm, and it's great. It's very steamy. Like, that's the point of it. There is a werewolf, a demon, and a fae. I think that's what the character calls them. It's just a little steamy monster erotic paranormal romance. Don't really know what else you can say other than that. And the other book that I have started is Met By Moonlight by Elisse Hay, which is the 3rd book in the Something Wicked series, so I am continuing to read that series. This book in particular I know has the FMC being sexually assaulted, I believe. I don't believe it's on page. I've gone through Elisse Hay's content notes and trigger warnings. She actually has very detailed, in-depth notes for the first 3 books in the series. And it does say there is an on-page violent assault, but the sexual assault is off-page. So we shall see how I go. At least I know what I'm going into with the book, and I'm 18% of the way into the book already. I can kind of tell at this point anyway that something is building. I will keep you updated. There is also a really good author's note at the start of the book where Elisse Hay says if you really can't read the book, if it's not something that you can read, you can skip to the 4th book, and there's a summary of what happens at the start of the 4th book. So, I mean, that's also very helpful to know. But for now, I am going to get a few things organised around here. I'm hoping to go out tonight to see the Australian women's ice hockey team play an exhibition game against the women's All-Stars team before the national team goes off to play in the Worlds tournament. I've got my stuff ready to go. I'm back in time. I've eaten food. That's the plan. That's what I'm hoping to do tonight. Would I do this on a weeknight? Absolutely not, because the game starts at 7:30 and that means I won't get back till about 11 o'clock at night, but I don't have work tomorrow. So this is doable. Hello friends. So I'm back. I didn't get to update you yesterday with my reading because I was not at home. And I did finish Met By Moonlight by Elisse Hay, which is the 3rd book in the Something Wicked series, which is the one where I knew that there were quite a few content warnings going into it. I can't remember what I said in my last clip, but I was talking about, I knew what the content warnings were going in, I knew what the triggers were going to be, and I was feeling uncomfortable with the storyline. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get through the book. And what I worked out is it wasn't so much the content that was, well, the negative content that was bothering me. It was the way the author wrote very well the fact that our main character begins to disassociate with the situation that she finds herself in. So essentially, I will put spoilers down here, just fast forward until the tag is gone if you don't want to know. But our main character is recruited for a new position within her role and is recruited by the head wizard of this part of the state to take on a new role. And there's a certain number of other witches and magical folk that are recruited alongside her. But he has very sinisterly insinuated himself into her life. He knows who she is before she knows who he is. And so straight away, red flags. And then what happens is she begins to lose time. She begins to feel sick at times when she's involved in exchanges with this character, and then begins to lose time, and then begins to feel like she's losing her mind. that she's missing appointments, and at one point she thinks she's lost her wallet while she's around him and he has to pay for things, and then it drops out and he does the gaslighting thing of next time you need to be more careful, despite the fact that he spent the whole afternoon telling her how wonderful she is. So it's that really insidious behavior, and that's what I found most uncomfortable, is because as the reader I knew what was going on, but the character recognized signs of it but not all of it, and so she was questioning her own judgment of the situation, and that's what was so uncomfortable. So I will say be very mindful if you are at all sensitive to that, because the character there's no other word for it, he is insidious. And there is an essay, but it is implied on page because right as it's about to happen she loses time. This is one time where she remembers that it happens, and she can't say for certain that it's the first or only time that it happened. And so there's a lot of her mental health PTSD going on, and it affects her in so many different ways, including disordered eating that people comment on, and finding it hard to confide in people in her support network, of which she has a very good support network, who recognize that something is going on, but they don't know quite what. And as soon as she lets them in and tells them what's happened, they are all on board and they are surrounding her and trying to support her through everything that goes on. And there's a whole lot more to that. The actual relationship she's in is complicated. She is dating a member of the Supernatural Police Force. She finds out that he used to be a witch hunter and she is a witch. And this is before the world knew what it does about the supernaturals and put things into place to try and create laws and programs that support them and their integration into society, and also to give them protections from people persecuting them. So there's a really interesting conversation between them. Like, it was the mind trippiness of the main character not trusting herself and not knowing what to believe has happened that was probably what threw me the most from the book. And then after I finished Met By Moonlight, I also read Ethan and Jag Destroy the World by Maddox. It's been a while since I read a Maddox book. She wrote the Relic series, which was the Dinosaur Shifters, and this one is just really cute. It's actually 2 stories in the one book. There was a novella that was released as part of an anthology, which is a Christmas novella about a linguist who accidentally summons a demon to help get revenge on, or to help make his ex-boyfriend jealous. And the demon who is summoned is very unfamiliar with Earth customs and struggles a lot with fitting in with Earth culture. And so there are a few hilarious little moments, and they end up falling for one another, and the demon is stuck on Earth because he can't get home yet for reasons that you find out in the story. And then the title story, Ethan and Jag Destroy the World, is the after effects and ramifications of Jag the demon being stuck on Earth, and the fact that his being there is causing rifts in Earth to open up to Jag's world, and demons and monsters are coming through. It was just very fun and kind of silly and just utterly adorable, because Jag is trying to fit in, but you know, as a demon, has very specific things that he likes, and he's not allowed to cook in the kitchen, for one thing. Ethan has vetoed that. And for Halloween, they dress up as Power Rangers, but they're the Power Rangers outfits with skirts. I may or may not have laughed out loud at that point. Like, Maddox is just really good at incorporating little bits of pop culture without them overly being reminiscent of today, but they're nostalgic to that millennial audience. So I had a delightful time reading it. Is it the best thing in the world? No, but was it an enjoyable and delightful time after reading such a heavy book with heavy themes? Absolutely. Great little palate cleanser for just some ridiculous demon human shenanigans. And I am currently up to book 4 in the Something Wicked series. I just figured I'd keep powering along because this also fits for a 25 and 25 prompt that just dropped. And I would like to wrap up the series and just kind of get the conclusion to the story and just wrap my head around it. So I don't remember how far I got into it. I was actually reading on my phone, so that's going to be the place that I need to check. 33% of the way in. So I'll finish that tonight, and then 1, I will have completed a series I need to read this year. 2, I will hopefully just be a little bit more chill about these characters, because at the moment they're very stressful. I'm going to be honest and say, like, I really enjoy the stories, but I'm not going to recommend them to anyone who doesn't like being stressed out, because I've been nothing but stressed out for the last book and a half. All right, so I just finished Thunder, Lightning and Rain, and I think one of the, let's fix the lighting on this. I think one of the really interesting things is I'm still mulling over the 3rd book. I know I've talked about it a lot. And I was reading the author's note at the end of the book, or the 4th book, and she was talking about how the 3rd book was received and, you know, people's support. And she did make a really good point about how Rory's story about feeling uncomfortable, thinking that she's seeing red flags, but they're not trusting that she's recognizing that that's what they are, as that feeling of knowing and trusting yourself. And I think that's a really important one, which is something I think that the book and the series itself are doing really well. Thunder, Lightning and Rain is the fourth book. So Rory is our main character. She is with Tig, who is the supernatural police detective and former witch hunter. And every book's had its own kind of little story arc in terms of the supernatural creatures that Rory is working with. So now as a caretaker, she was sort of at that local level working with individual cases, and now she's a little bit higher than that. And so she and her group are working on very specific, very high needs supernatural cases. And in this case, they have a bear shifter who has just been transferred to Melbourne, and he has custody of 2 small children. And one of those children is, I think, 6 years old. Her name is Jessica, and she's been identified as needing some additional support since starting school. So not only have they come from through the rift and from another world into our world, they've also had to move states for some reason. And we know that their father figure has a big chip on his shoulder and is concerned that somebody might be coming after them. And so they're working with this case, which is one of the big overarching arcs. Rory also finds a little bit more about her parentage. She was raised by her single dad. It goes into exploring a lot about Rory and Tig's relationship. They actually have very open conversations because Rory is in such a different place where sometimes she doesn't really know, I don't want to say doesn't know what she wants, but she finds it difficult to articulate what it is that she needs. Like sometimes she knows she just flat out needs to stop anything that's intimate because it's just triggering her. Other times she's triggered just in conversation. And it's kind of nice, the conversations that they have, because she will call out Tig's behavior, and she does multiple times in the book, when he just does something that would be just commonplace and has made an assumption about something. And she's like, well, actually, you can't make that assumption about people, because that's an assumption people make about minority groups, and the people that I work with, they're the minority. And when you say that, you undermine everything that I'm doing. And at the same time, she does things in their relationship that she recognizes is also unfair on him. And so they have this balance. There's a lot of really good conversation around that relationship building. There's lots of really great side characters. I'm really enjoying the series. There is not a 5th book out at the moment, so I'm officially caught up. I am enjoying the series. I'm enjoying all the Melbourne references. So yay. I will probably try and read at least one more thing before the end of this readathon, but it will not be tomorrow. Tomorrow I need a break, and then I'll decide what it is I'm going to read. Hi everyone, it is time to wrap up this vlog, and I have 2 more things to update you on what I have read for the Love in the Night readathon. It has been a wild ride. That's the only way I can describe this. So I am going to wrap up the last 2 things. I am going to apologize because my brain is all over the place. I was out at the hockey today, and it was a wild game. It was nuts. So my brain is all over the place, but that's fine. I still got some reading done. Probably shouldn't have read afterwards because who knows what's going to come out of my mouth. So since I last updated you, I read volume 1 of Vampire Night, which is a manga, and I picked it up, 1, because I was trying to fill a bingo board prompt and it was not overly long. It is a manga that is set in a private college. Vampires exist, and our protagonist Yuki is, I think, a guardian, and her job is to keep the 2 classes of students at this private school separate. So there is the day class, which are the humans, and the night class students, who are the vampires. And most of the world does not know that vampires exist. Yuki does. She was attacked when she was a child, and she happens to know one of the vampires who is attending school there. And she also has a partner, Zero, who has a bit of a secret. This is probably more an introduction to the world, to the characters, sort of their relationship to one another, and finding out Zero's secret. May or may not have something to do with vampires. It was an enjoyable, easy read. And then this afternoon I read Thicker Than Water by Becca Seymour, which is book 1 in the Fangs and Felons series. It is about Callan, and we start the book with Callan, who works for the Supernatural Central Intelligence Bureau, I think is what the acronym stands for, and he has gone off book to investigate a facility, and there he finds that his sister has been kidnapped, tortured and killed, and this does not make him happy. He also finds another agent there who has been turned by his sister's werewolf bite. And one really cool bit of lore in this book is that werewolf bites generally won't turn humans. More often than not, it will probably kill them. But if a werewolf is dying, they can choose to gift their bite to a human. There's still a chance that the human will not survive this process, but the human inherits the memories of that person as well as the magic to shift. And that happens to be what happens to this agent Thatch. This is an paranormal romance set in Australia. I'll admit it was probably not the best thing that I've read. It's a solid 2.5, 3 kind of star read. It's not bad. It's not the best thing that I read either. I do think it hints at some really interesting world building, and it may potentially be one of Becca Seymour's first books, in which case I have read something that was published a little bit after this, and I found the writing to be probably a little bit more consistent than this one was. But essentially, Callan ends up helping Thatch with his transition because, one, Thatch has inherited all of his sister's memories, including the location of Callan's niece, who he doesn't know where she is because her sister was in hiding from their father and their pack. So their father is the leader of a pack in Queensland, and by all accounts, terrible, abusive, horrible, not a great alpha. So both of them left, and Callan desperately wants to find his niece. Callan also finds out that Thatch happens to head up a secret branch of the Supernatural Central Intelligence Bureau, and ends up recruiting Callan because Callan has knowledge that Thatch needs, and they end up living together and then falling for one another. And the pacing of that was a little bit inconsistent, and some of the stuff around the timing of how things happen, we kind of jump around a lot with very little information. It's one of those books where probably about 50 pages of world building spread out through everything else would have just enhanced this a little bit more. But if you're just looking for something that's go, go, go action, that's pretty much what it is. And so at the end of all of that, I have read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 things. I think the most interesting book that I read was A Time to Rise by Bauer, just because the concept is so wild, and I just love explaining to people that it is a Templar Knight and a Swiss Guard member fighting vampires and demons in the Vatican. That premise, amazing. The Louisa Masters books were just super fun because they're lighthearted and so easy to read. You can just sit and read them and you don't have to think. I appreciate those kinds of books. I mean, I reread Magic Binds, so that's always going to top any list. And the Elisse Hay series, I'm really glad that I read it, even though it caused me a lot of stress. And I know I talked through a lot of that. I'm glad that I read it because it was not an easy read, and yet at the same time, I really enjoyed it. Hopefully, if you didn't get a chance to attend the live show for Sing Me to Sleep or our wrap up of the readathon, I will leave that link down below so you can go check it out if you want to watch the replay. In the comments, I'd love to know, did you participate? What did you read? What was your favorite read for the readathon? And if you didn't participate, just feel free to leave any kind of magical, supernaturally inspired emoji of your choice, whatever that means to you. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.